All right, and we are live. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. I am here with my gracious guest, Mandar. He is a SCADA developer from OrangeWit, and he has kindly agreed to be on today completely of his own will to have a fireside chat about all things industrial automation and open source. And what people really love to hear from the guests we have on is to get an understanding of their background and how they got involved with this profession in the first place. It helps put a human touch to the different facets that we'll cover today. And so, with that, Mandar, if you can just give us a brief background on how you got started in this profession. You know, if you went to university for the typical path people associate with controls engineers or computer scientists, if you've ever worked for a end user, and how you landed today to work with your own consultancies. So with that, I'll let you go ahead and take it away, Mandar.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Henry. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Mandar Ghotkar. I am CEO of OrangeWit Consulting, and we develop our own SCADA system called as Ensemble SCADA and a SCADA reporting software named Report Tactics. And Henry, a special thanks to you for having me today. So now coming back to my background, yeah, me and my partner, we started this company in 2017, and we both of us are engineers. We did our electrical engineering, and PLC and SCADA was very much a part of our education. So that there was always a fascination of working with PLCs and SCADA, working in industrial environment. So in 2007, one of our clients, he requested to have a web-based application to manage their water distribution across Nagpur city. So the client's name is Orange City Water Private Limited. It's a Veolia company, French giant in water utility distribution. So we got that first opportunity, and from there we have developed SCADA. We developed, I mean, yeah, that's a. I mean, initially it was SCADA, then slowly we converted that into a remote monitoring system and Industry 4.0 solution. So today we serve manufacturing and utility industries for Industry 4.0 initiatives.
Well, very cool, interesting. That's always nice to hear. The background of folks, and it sounds like you really have the experience of being directly at the shop floor, where you're right at the heart of where all the action is taking place, where
Yes,
everything
yes,
from machine setup to data connectivity
yeah,
and all of
yeah,
the application functionality. And
correct.
of all the things that you could have gone into right in this profession, why specifically at the shop floor level? Is that something that you've always particularly liked, working, be it directly with machines, or is it just a passion that you like helping the folks on the floor? Just always curious to see, because there's so many different pieces that you could land in, and you chose honestly what I think is probably the hardest.
Yes. So being an engineer, love for machines was always there. As I said, I was fascinated with SCADA and PLC during my education. We did not get an access, ready access or easy access to PLC systems and SCADA systems. So working in industry got that, I mean, provided that access to me, and that is how I got got again hooked up with this particular thing. And as you say, yes, it is hard, but yes, it is satisfying as well.
Yeah, talk to me about that, the piece of not having access to some of the tooling basically you would need to get training on. And I'll explain what I mean. So, when I went to university, frankly, if I did not go to university, there was no way that I would have ever gotten any sort of training on what a programmable logical controller is, a PLC is. what a
Right.
microcontroller is, what a
Right.
instrument like a force, an edge device or a field device like a force gauge is.
Right.
And it seemed to me that it was almost like a barrier where sort of like you had to pay to play. You had to already be in this environment to even understand. And I think that
Yeah.
naturally poses a lot of different questions around accessibility. And I'm just curious to hear sort of your perspective on, this barrier that all of us in this profession face. And I think
Yeah.
raises a lot of interesting questions.
Right. So I was in university 20 years back. I completed my university education 20 years back. 2004, I did my engineering. So considering 4 years earlier to it, there was really no access to all these things. And I don't feel it's not only in my college or my university. I feel PLC accessibility to PLC and doing the programming was. I mean, I had my friends who went to US for their masters, and even they found that PLC was not very easily accessible. But now I find that the situation is changing. The scenario is completely different. Colleges and universities are investing in developing SCADA kits, and as you say, the controllers, the PLCs, the microcontrollers, and all this stuff. So I get to work with my alma mater, they call me, and I sometimes help those guys to execute some small projects or something like that. But now, yes, the accessibility is there. So the barrier, as you said, the barrier has now gone. Partly the reason is there were no experts in that time in say 2000, 2001, 2002. At that time, PLCs were quite expensive at that time. Now a lot of companies are there, a lot of products are there, a lot of competition is there. So even for a university or a college to afford a set of PLCs and maintain them for batches to come is quite easy right now. Earlier, it was only in industries. Earlier, no access. I mean, I did a project. I submitted a paper while I was doing my sixth semester. So we did uh, a ladder logic for a robot,
Mhm.
but then ladder logic was never tested because we didn't have anything to test. That was all on paper.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I think
Uh,
for a profession that has been around for some time, I think we can agree that electronic automation, rather than just the
mhm.
pneumatic control of producing things, that's been around for quite a while. I think it
Yeah.
also is fascinating when you take a look at the opposite side of technology that's been around for a short period, like software
Mhm.
systems. And even with software systems, there is higher grade industrial equipment that you need to do some sort of technology development, right? You have
Yep.
industrial grade servers, industrial grade routers, industrial grade uh, telecommunications equipment. But the fascinating thing is you could get a lot of this IT equipment uh, refurbished or otherwise for very cheap. Whereas the industrial automation equipment like controllers and field devices
Mm.
continued to stay highly inaccessible. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating because the two shows that age is not the deciding factor. And I'm just curious to see what you might think is the deciding factor around why the continued lack of access to some of this tooling.
I will rather say it's not lack of access, but lack of application. Uh, Let us assume, I mean, a PLC can simulate certain things. You can do some projects, but then those would remain in the box. Those would remain in the lab, right? If one has to actually access field devices, then there are no applications to do. So for example, you want to install a flow meter, you need a pipe, you need water to flow from that pipe, right? If you want to measure energy consumption, electricity consumption, then you need to have a meter there, and then the need to measure the actual consumption of energy. So, industrial cases are, yes, as you say, they are. I mean, they are isolated, and that is the reason why it seems that it is not accessible. But people like students or engineers who are not related to industry, they don't find the right use case for it. So if I'm a developer and I see that I can write some code and create an application, a small application for some small purpose, they might find takers for it, right? There is instant ratification to that idea. But when it comes to industrial cases, that becomes challenging.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think the physical environment has to be there. And I
Yeah.
think, when you talk about digital, when it's software, it's a lot easier to put things together.
Right.
And the last thing I'll say on this is, and we'll move on because I think it links next nicely with the next topic,
Mhm.
is there are things that we call like a training kit or trainers, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a mock little box that you, or kit that you buy, that has some of this pre-built into the box so that you don't have to worry about setting up a pipe or setting up airflow. And it's fascinating to me that the quickest takeoff has been actually from the has been marketed as like a hobbyist kit for non-industrial companies like Arduino that sell some of this stuff.
Mhm.
And
Right.
when you look at how long Arduino has been around, because trainers, right? I'm sure you've probably trained on a trainer. I know I have. Uh,
Yeah.
the training kits have been around for quite a while, and to make them
Right.
smaller, right? Like
Yeah.
devices like FPGAs have been around for a while as
Mhm.
well. And so it's
Yes. Yeah.
fascinating to me that yet again, age is not the factor, and it's interesting,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
that
Yeah. So,
that's the thing. I'll leave it at that. I'll let you if you have anything to say to that.
uh,
But
just one statement. I mean, I have worked with Arduino. My partner Kaustubh, he is a techie, so he keeps on working with microcontrollers and Arduinos and stuff like that, right? So those are cheap as compared to industrial devices or field devices. But then those are not industrial grade devices. So those are good enough for lab kits. Those are good enough for college students to do some projects or to explore, or not even college. I have seen school kids also doing amazing experiments with Arduino and all. Because now the availability is there, accessibility is there, and prices are very low.
um, I'm curious to hear, and I think people would also love to hear somebody that's actually in this profession, and particularly somebody that is responsible for managing the success of a business. What your thoughts on are the current state of affairs on trends in the profession, particularly when it comes to some of the roles that people might perceive of legacy institutions like associations, or the
Mhm.
ways that some of the individuals get together to either make standards or build technologies and come together basically to collaborate. People are really curious to see and hear from folks like you who are right at the front lines on what some of these trends you might see, both on the technology side and then as well as
Mhm.
the institutions that um, at least claim to be there for the advancement of the profession. And you can pick either one. and I'll sort of guide you along it.
Okay.
But just love to hear your thoughts.
Okay. So we'll start with say associations,
Yep.
right? Yeah. So the field that we belong to is a part of industrial association. Basically, control automation is what we do, right? And there are two great associations there in United States. One is CSIA and another is ISA, right? So in their own capacity, they are doing certain things, but I feel the efforts are, efforts to bring in new players are not happening on the scale. How I look at it, I come from before getting into this OT thing, I was into IT.
Hmm.
Okay, so I have seen, the very reason for IT to flourish, people who wanted to access it, right? So, three people sitting at three different locations could come up with a software and some small application or a software, and they could make big out of it. But then when it comes to industrial automation, control automation things, smaller companies, yeah, we are small. We are kind of a startup again. So for us to experience that accessibility to the markets, let us say, or to have that kind of mm, mm, reach outreach for the customers. I feel associations can do a better role here to bring in new players. So IT was revolutionized because small players could contribute big time.
Hmm.
Eventually, they became big or they were bought out by bigger companies, right? But then, if we look at industrial automation for last 20 years, we hear how many names do you know? If I ask you this question, how many names do you know? I can say Siemens, Allen Bradley, Schneider, Bosch, Mitsubishi nowadays. What more?
You're right. Yeah, it's my sentiments there. I agree with you because I think predominantly the role that I personally see is really
Hmm.
twofold for associations. On the one hand, I absolutely agree with you that there's a very clear need uh, to have a support system that simply just serves as a networking arm. All they do is just outreach. There's no pay they take from marketing any particular company or individual. They just simply essentially serve as like a list of lists, right? Here is XYZ organizations and products in XYZ environments. And then on the other
Right.
hand, I think for me, what I see a new role that is very much needed from associations is also serving as a sort of watchdog group that outs bad behavior because it is such a large field. It is impossible to expect just your stereotypical, legal systems to take care of everything, especially for the fact that um, a lot of this, unfortunately, has to include very confusing, oftentimes technical jargon. And just like we have medical associations that do public outreach to educate members of the public on, and we saw this during the COVID pandemic, right? There was all sorts of medical associations that specifically were trained how to do public education and public outreach, not just to medical professionals, right? They were not talking just to medical professionals. They were talking to the public directly on
Yeah.
things that were directly impacting them, and
Correct.
they were teaching them
Correct.
along the way. And I think that is a
Right.
huge need for associations to do, not just to serve the already trained professionals, but specifically to train the public and to help the public understand when bad actions do happen. And they do happen quite a
Right.
bit in this field. And people
I
really
know.
want to see people get held accountable, but they cannot ask the right questions if they don't even know what's going on. And if they can't even ask a question, then there's no hope for them. And
Right. I
I'd love to
understand.
hear your thoughts on that role, because I think we can agree on the first for sure, right? There's definitely a
Yeah.
need for them to help market. And I think the way that
Yeah.
they can achieve that is adopting
Mm-hmm.
this new role that I just mentioned of direct outreach to the public and being like a watchdog group.
Correct. So I am with you completely on this because, but there is a slight. I mean, if we compare a role of medical associations in educating the public, here I guess they'll have to make a bigger impact because the public in this case is industries, right? And there is no one person to take decision in an industry, in a manufacturing plant, right? So there are people who understand technology inside. I mean, I'm talking about industry customers, right? So there are people who understand finance, there are people who understand technology, there are people who understand operations, right? And on top of this, these guys are dependent on system integrators, right?
Hmm.
Because systems integrator are people who do the actual implementation of any sort of control automation, maybe a plain PLC SCADA field devices based automation, or maybe an Industry 4.0 initiative. Unless there is no system integrator, any project cannot fly off. So, system integrators, I mean, if we could make more efforts to educate them for them to accept more solutions and to upgrade even to smaller solutions, that is a better way of I mean letting small companies enter into the market, because at the end of the day, the systems integrator would be the one who is going to execute the thing. He's going to have his men on the ground there. So uh, today what I find is systems integrator do not find options, or rather they are not ready, would be wrong, but then yeah, they are not even looking for options other than solutions by big companies like I said, as Siemens, Allen Bradley. So systems integrator are kind of boxed into a frame where they feel okay, if a solution doesn't fit into this particular application, then they face a challenge. Many times they even lose that business or that opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you talk about, right, markets, fundamentally you're also talking about control, right? You're talking about power, and you're talking about the ability to influence and sway entire masses of people, right? Not just the
Mm.
integrators, but which involves members of the public. And I think one of the fascinating things that is rarely, if on it, well, no, it's never talked about. I know that for a fact because there are popular influencers that do not talk about this publicly. And what I'm alluding to is the fact that when you talk about technology, people do not talk about the power and control aspect, and specifically the ownership of assets. In this case, we're talking about technology assets and how those technology assets have direct, immediate influence on people's lives and who are the owners of those assets. And when it comes to manufacturing, there's a couple of basics that everybody needs to know. Number one, everybody needs to produce, which is how we are able to get product. And number
Yeah.
two, when it comes to manufacturing, everybody has the same need of technology. And so
Yeah.
for years, these major companies that you've listed, and there are others as well, have received public funds to assist with their research and development In the United States, as an example, this can come in several forms. This will be tax breaks for receiving no taxes on land. Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
that's one. Another is
Mm-hmm.
they can be issued land for pennies on the dollar in addition to the tax breaks, right?
Right.
That's a second form of investment. A third is just a direct infusion of cash, which happens also a lot of the time. We've seen this with major automotive companies. Another is with bailouts when a company does not perform as they expect and publicize, yet they use taxpayer dollars to continue their operations. And
Right.
it's fascinating to me because specifically when we talk about the assets that these companies generate, they have received huge, talking over billions at this point. If we were to truly sum it up, it's in the trillions of public dollars that otherwise could have gone towards other public needs, right? It's not without a opportunity cost. And the state of the profession is that these technology assets are still held privately, right? The building, how it's actually constructed, the actual SCADA software, as well as the construction of the controllers, still proprietary. Yet, after receiving billions and upon trillions of public dollars, I find that interesting. And I am just curious to sort of hear your thoughts on that because we have seen on the flip side where things like pharmaceutical drugs do get public investment. And what happens with those? The entire research is published and made accessible to all. The components that go into the drug, how the drug was manufactured, the distribution of the drug, the entire clinical methodology for conducting experimentation. Yet,
Right.
when it comes to this other scientific profession, it's like, well, it includes technology, so we're not going to do that. And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. So, if you want me to add my views on this, to be honest, I have not seen, rather, I'm not aware about this, that public money is invested directly as cash in technology companies. I've seen that happening, the bailouts and the investments happening in banks and all. But then no technology company, I have not seen. So it's my, maybe I'm not aware enough for that. And when we talk about getting lands and tax breaks, so I feel it is perfectly okay for people to get those because these are PLI schemes, right? Performance linked incentive schemes, where the companies are generating employment, right?
Yeah, sure.
Company,
Yeah.
you know, so company as an entity, maybe they get a tax break, right? But then the employees who are earning salaries, they are paying their taxes. They don't get the tax break. So the government or the public money uh, is always retrieved if I mean if a government gives a PLI or a performance linked incentive scheme to someone in the way of mm, a cheap land or tax breaks for the company. They retrieve the money from salaries. They retrieve the money from because now the government doesn't have to take care of so many people who are employed there, right? So I mean, to be honest, I don't find that as a challenge today. The challenge perhaps is listen, man. These companies have invested heavily in getting the technology on table, right? So it's not today the where the technology. I mean, what we see, it's not effort of today. They have been doing it for some years now, right? So for companies like me to enter, we need to innovate more. We need to reach. I mean, innovate not only on technology front, innovating on marketing front is also important, right? Yeah. If it comes to associations, there should not be a favor to bigger company, they should give scope to anyone and everyone if the problem is getting solved. That much I can say. I can add up to your thought. But for me to grow big, I cannot clip wings of somebody else. I don't somehow subscribe to that kind of philosophy. Yeah, I mean, if I come up with a plan where I can approach a government and say, okay, give me tax breaks, give me cheap land, I'll certainly do it. It's upon me that I cannot come up with some plan like that. So I may be with them on this page, but on with you on getting opportunity to at least enter the market.
Yeah, the point really of it all is not the damnation of the company. There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
receiving public funds. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful system, and it's good because it helps achieve economies of scale and reduce capital investment costs. Specifically, the issue I take is the equity and ownership of assets. Jobs, right, are not an asset. Jobs is not an asset. A job is not an asset. So what's
Right.
happening specifically, right, this is a very clear, direct, explicit link, is assets are not being distributed. Assets are being held. When that happens, then you clearly have a successful pathway towards severe wealth inequality. And in this case, it's assets that are technology assets that otherwise they were public. They would allow somebody like yourself to not have to make such a huge investment on developing. You could use different platforms, and depending on the needs that you find, you can simply take parts of those and not have to spend all of that capital investment and cost. That's the issue I take with all of it. It's not the receiving of public funds, it's the hoarding and keeping of assets, which is directly equal to the hoarding of wealth, which stunts the progress of innovation and for newcomers like yourself to really meet a very clear need and move the entire profession forward. And that directly relates then to the public, because if the public is not receiving equity on their investment in the form of ownership of assets, you know, I can promise jobs, which happens all the time, I'm sure you've seen, and then those jobs I take away. And at the end of the day, there's no upward mobility because the asset still belongs with me. And if I still own the asset, then there's no wealth distribution, there's no upward mobility, there's no pathway, just even the option, right? I'm not even talking about the guarantee, just a simple option of ownership of assets that you invest in. I mean, let me ask you this. When you make an investment in private equity and there's a pathway for you towards wealth and upward mobility, correct? You receive returns, you receive dividends. Is that not true?
Yes.
It is true, yes. Why should it be any different in the technology sphere? Specifically, we don't need them to give us direct dividends. That's the whole point. The return on the investment is, cool, we get it. We gave you this cash and we gave you these resources. We don't want it back in kind. We want it back in technology assets. So release the technology assets that we invested in. That's the point that often gets lost, and what I believe is fundamental to this entire conversation, because that is a point that associations really would be aiding and helping folks like yourself who are really providing a clear need and meeting a lot of manufacturers where they're at and doing most of the legwork. And you would be better served, in my opinion, if associations were doing a lot of this legwork, a lot of this community outreach, so that you can focus on where your customers actually need you, and that would save you a lot of time and money. That's the argument I have. I don't know if you agree with that. I don't know if you have thoughts on it, but that's the argument I take.
If you want me to add some thoughts, I can.
Yes.
I'll pick the thread of pharma. You rightly mentioned there are funds which go into pharma, but then pharma has everything in public. At least they declare everything in public, right? But then they have assets in terms of patents, right? And those patents are held by them for some amount of time.
Yes, which I do not agree with.
Okay.
It's a very bad practice. Very, very bad.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. So, I mean, if you don't agree with that as well, then your disagreement on technology front is accepted.
Yes.
I per- I may agree in both the cases, but you may not. So let us agree to disagree and go to the next topic.
Yeah. Um, I would really love to hear, some of your thoughts on the sort of electrification of basically the infrastructure that we have, be it electric cars, electric bicycles, electric scooters. And
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen, people around where you live using any of these electric devices, and if they have gained any popularity. I know in some of the bigger cities, even smaller cities like Rochester here, I've actually seen them quite a bit. But I'm curious to see if you've seen some of this ramping up with the electrification of cities and so forth.
Yeah. In India as a whole and my city of Nagpur, I get to see a lot of electrification, as you say, or EV, as we say it, electric vehicle or electric mobility that we usually call it as. So we are a land of, I mean, two-wheelers in huge numbers, three-wheelers in huge numbers. That may come as a surprise to you, and four-wheelers, as in cars, in huge numbers. So all three of the categories are picking up, and for local transportation also. So transport vehicles are also working on EV.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because, you know, that also is a need for the programming of basically a DCS, right? There's an entire
Yeah,
need for that market, and I
yeah,
frankly have yet to see any association actually assisting people that are looking to make investments on that, right? People like yourself who are looking to maybe build technology. Uh, I'm just
yeah,
giving out, at this point, we're just giving out free ideas for some of these associations because this is a very clear, direct path, right? To do community outreach and also make some money. This is a
yeah.
option, and I'm curious to see if some of the environments you've worked in have deployed, you know, AGVs, autonomous guided vehicles, and if they've seen any interest in the sort of turning parts of their factory into electric, mostly electric operated tooling and machinery or battery powered equipment.
No, I mean, I have not yet come across, particularly in wherever I have worked. Uh, Battery operated vehicles are only forklifts, and in some cases, bigger lifts, cranes rather,
Okay.
but nothing more than that. Nothing more than that.
Have you ever, you know, autonomous guided vehicles, for example, is a really common application where you can do a
Mhm.
couple of different things, as I'm sure you're familiar with, where you can make race routes and you can have
Mhm.
the vehicle go down a preset path. And
Yeah.
to this day, even though the big names are out there, I don't know of any SCADA solution that offers the ability to neatly integrate with some of these equipment to monitor them. And in fact, I know it does not. And at the Kodak plant we actually had a ton of AGV equipment that what they did is they took a roll of film. So it would unwind on one end and wind back up on another end, and the AGV would transport it to its next station for coating and treatment, and all battery powered. You can walk up to it, and it's just like replacing an electric bike battery. It's a slot that you slide out by hand. There's an HMI, and an operator sets it into a mode of standby, and there's a whole procedure. You know, you load one battery in while keeping the second, and so on. And we didn't have a nice package to integrate and manage all that. All of it was custom scripted. And I'm thankful for the opportunity. However, I think that again serves as a reminder that there's a need, right? And maybe somebody, whether it be your consulting business or another consulting business, clearly there's no solution yet for meeting that need. And these are the kinds of conversations I think you would agree that associations need to be helping steer, because they have the funds, right? I mean, they've been around for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
So the AGV, as you said, I'll give you an idea I worked upon some couple of months back. I didn't get a chance to actually execute it because it is not yet accepted, but then we are working on ash bund. So it's a open lake, manually made lake, where ash of the power plant, the generation plant, is dumped along with water, and that ash bund is cleared for the ash for some cement manufacturing or road construction or other applications. Usually it is situated in far off places, quite away from power plants and quite away from the farms as well. But if something goes wrong, if the ash has not been cleared or the water is not cleared in the bund, what happens is the ash overflows and that becomes a criminal offense. So I have conceived a solution for that. It's a solar powered, battery operated vehicle, so to say, that will float on water, kind of a hovering vehicle that will float on water and measure the levels of ash deposited at various locations in the bund. So that is one application that we have proposed, but then we don't see end of the tunnel right now.
Yeah.
And if you remember last time, last time when we were talking, I actually liked one of the ideas that associations can go one more step. I mean, they can execute and see awesome results. Is they can do two things. One is the hackathon thing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an awesome suggestion. Awesome suggestion.
Yeah.
And another is the product features.
Yes, absolutely. I think especially, for a hackathon, when we talk about cost for you as a business owner, rather than invest numerous tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and so on into ensuring integrity, resiliency, you can have a hackathon and you can gain a lot. And it's two ways. It goes both ways. You earn a lot and you save a lot, and the public and practitioners earn a lot and save a lot. And that is a beautiful thing, because now we have vehicles safely transporting waste, and we can securely monitor to make sure of attackers, of issues of the machine going down, and you did not have to invest in an army of cybersecurity engineers to do that. And that's exactly what happens with open, what we call open source projects, really, which are just a public asset in the technology sphere, and You have researchers at universities that can apply for grants, that might
Mm-hmm.
also receive funds from private investors and
Yes.
receive money from the school to do this kind of very, very well needed type of work. And
Right.
they are very low cost to do, and people
Right.
that get involved do it as a public service. Most hackathons
Right.
I've personally attended, you might have to pay a small entry fee, and that's just to cover
Yeah.
the cost of renting the venue. But other than that,
Nothing else.
that's it. That's it.
Right. Correct. Do you have an idea?
Yeah. It's
If
there's
if
yeah, go
if
ahead.
I get to ask you next weekend, if we organize a hackathon, do we have a topic?
Yeah.
Let us try.
Yeah, we can easily bring in a vendor like yourself. In fact, I literally have
Mhm.
had interviews all week long of people trying to develop basically this similar SCADA environment solution that you're talking about. And all of
Mhm.
them are small businesses. Frankly, all their products sound exactly the freaking same to me. And they're targeting the same manufacturing verticals. And rather
Mhm.
than all of you doing repeat work, we have your product on a hackathon and we go at it, right? I mean, literally just that. And that's how you do it. And you can do that now on a who's the next 2 or 3 vendors that might be interested. And there's entire open communities. So like DEF CON, that
Mhm.
is a entire hackathon conference. It occurs
Yeah.
annually, and they, instead of vendors coming to them, what they do is people from
Mhm.
the industry, they will take a vendor's product that they will buy of their own money, and then they have at it, right?
Mhm.
And what it shows to me is that number one, there's a need, because the people that attend these conferences, they attend usually most often because their customers are saying, we experienced this security issue. We really need your help. Please help us. We are coming to you for help. And
Right.
associations are not helping them. And so they take
Mhm.
matters into their own hands and reach out to the community. And I think we
Right.
can easily just put the two together. And the network relationships already exist. ISA
Yeah.
already has relationships. So does
Yeah.
the Control Systems Integrators Association, CSIA. So do all
Yeah.
these other associations.
A lot of
And
them.
the fear of breaking stuff is silly, because we're talking about a space that is naturally very dangerous. And I don't know
Mhm.
about you, but I want to make sure that people get home safely. I want to make sure that we have a safe factory. I
Yeah.
absolutely want to do everything in my power to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that means if I have a free option to make my product safer at no cost to me, it just makes sense.
Okay. So this who vets this product?
You can take any. I think one of the easiest ones that people can do is just to show it. In fact, I know they did it at the information. It's the IIAS. It's the Information Association Society. They're basically more like an IT group, but they
Mhm.
have cybersecurity focus. And what they were doing was, in some of their workshops, they were taking some open tools, and we did just that. One of those tools was actually Node-RED, and it was held at a hotel venue in downtown Rochester by the Hyatt,
Mhm.
and that's what we did. We took a open tool, and afterwards, people made suggestions on the GitHub page, and they were making commits, and that's how you can easily do it. And that ties interestingly to the next point of open source and why it can be so beneficial, because you have this abundance of people that
Mm-hmm.
you otherwise do not have access to if you keep the
Yeah.
entire stack proprietary. And
Yeah.
where it gets even more interesting is in the government application. At least in the United States, agencies like the Department of Defense, when a software vendor or even a SCADA vendor comes, they say, cool, that's interesting. I want to see every line of code. You say to trust you, I don't trust you. I will trust you only so far as I can see your code. Let me see it, then I'll see how much I can trust you. Why should it be any different for manufacturing of public utilities, manufacturing of any other product? We're talking about people's lives here. And, the Department of Defense is not stupid. They understand. It's why when the agents, when vendors deal with them, they say, cool, that's interesting. I see you have all these certifications. Then let me see your code. Then I will tell you how much I trust you. And that's how that works. I mean, it's just simple, right? This is like engineering 101 type of things we're talking about here.
Right. So regarding open source, I'm a big fan of open source. I have done a lot of things with open source, but there are two things here. Open source, what do you trust? Open source Linux or a SUSE Linux or a Fedora Linux or Ubuntu Linux?
Yeah, it's interesting topic, isn't it? The level of
Yeah,
trust. Yeah.
yeah. So there has to be someone who takes the responsibility. There has to be someone who stands up and kind of I mean, has the ownership of that particular, let us say, a product or open source, anything. So WordPress claims that it is a. I'm coming from IT side. WordPress claims that it is open source, right?
Mm.
Today, OPC Foundation has put its code base in open source. All their OPC UA code is available on open source. Okay, so at least OPC Foundation is there, who's ready to take the responsibility, who has the not ownership in terms of equity or anything, but then if I want to know or I want some support, there should be someone. Open source is something which is kind of a foster child if there is no organization backing it.
Well, let me ask you this then. So, with open projects, right? There are trusted
Mhm.
contributors. What do you
Yeah,
say to businesses that are making money today in this sphere that
yeah,
have a open source project like United Manufacturing Hub or FlowFuse?
yeah, yeah,
What do
yeah.
you
They
think
are.
of? I mean, these are two very successful examples. They're not the only ones. Um,
Yeah.
so
So
I'm curious what your thoughts are.
okay, so to the core of it, to the base of it, maybe they are working on open source, but that open source directly doesn't go to the customer. United Manufacturing Hub develops something on top of it and then takes the ownership of delivering this product in the right frame. Okay, so a customer doesn't have to go hunting for open source developers or open source support. He knows where to reach out, and that is United Manufacturing Hub. So United Manufacturing built a business from open source, absolutely fine, right? But then United Manufacturing is there to take the ownership of the delivery of the product they are delivering. I can see United Manufacturing Hub is a responsible organization. So if you move to IT, let us have a parallel discussion of what happens in IT. Okay, you have heard of WordPress?
Yes.
Yeah, WordPress is open source,
Hmm.
right? It is built on PHP and everything is open out there in open. But WordPress in itself, even though an open source project, WordPress as a company is there to support. WordPress as a company is there to find bugs and fix them, right? The contributors, they go on adding things, but what to maintain and what to curtail is at the end of the day in the hands of that particular community or the company. Maybe that's a not-for-profit company, but then there is someone who's taking the responsibility. World cannot operate on open source directly. There has to be someone who stands up and builds on top of some open source things, understands everything, builds on top of it, delivers, and be there whenever the customer needs.
Yeah, so I think what you're alluding to is support, right, for a technology. And
Not only support,
yeah,
not only support. There has to be a roadmap. Okay, so an open source project, I think something, I contribute, you think something, you contribute, there is someone else who contributes, but then there is no direction there, right? So WordPress defines what it is going to take WordPress towards, WordPress.com towards, rather, I rather say, put it this way.
well, how do you mean by that? Because in open source projects, the difference is, number one, there usually are like roadmaps of features, add-ons, and issues to reconcile. But
Yeah.
so I'm a little confused by that. But the other thing is the way the development of such a roadmap is not
Mhm.
just at the behest of one individual. There's no single entity, right? And that's the difference with open projects, that the stakeholders are directly involved with the development. So timelines do exist. There's usually, the proposals are made oftentimes directly by the community. And trusted contributors have an option to include or not include. And oftentimes they do include because, frankly, the usage of the product, right, is something the community has direct experience with. And therefore they can say, these are the issues we spotted. And
Mhm.
these are based on those issues where we believe the future is. And I think the part you might be alluding to is, how do you then also develop a support of maintenance and even helping companies implement it? And I think that is where the investment piece of networking plays in, where associations, in my eyes, that is a responsibility that falls squarely in part to them, because they have the network. There is clearly a need for these technologies. Help these upcoming vendors who just so happen to be building an open technology, but help them not only build it, but also help other people that might be looking to support it, where they might not look to build the technology, but they're looking to help companies implement and host it. And that's exactly what FlowFuse does, right? That's exactly
Okay.
what FlowFuse does, where they happen to, in this case, be trusted contributors, but they specifically make their money on managing deployments and hosting
Implementation.
it. And that
Right.
is a perfect opportunity, especially for people like yourself who are looking to get into potential new business ventures. Maybe you don't
Yeah.
want to build an entire SCADA product, but you want to help somebody who has built one. You want to help them host it. You want to help a
Yeah.
company manage the deployment so they don't have to worry about it. And that's a very beautiful thing. And that, I think, is why I personally am so strong on the open source project, because you don't have to, number one, do repeat work, which right
Mhm.
now is happening all across the board. And number two,
Yeah.
I might not want to build a SCADA solution, but I want to help host it. I'm really good at hosting it. I have the resources to host it. I just want to help
Mhm.
companies implement and host it. That's all I want to
Yeah.
do.
Right.
And there's money in that. People will pay for
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll tell you something about us. So when we develop our market, uh, we work through system integrators. We work with channel partners. We don't directly work with end users or industry customers per se. So we try both the options, and we are seeing amazing results with that.
Hmm.
So people who are system integrators of traditional companies or biggies, as we discussed, they are interested in new projects, new products, no doubt. But there are other vendors also who are now taking interest. Someone who provides IT support, someone who provides networking support. Even now they have started taking interest, and they are getting into this field. So yeah, the scope is expanding. So uh, yeah, we have good days to look forward to.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is very, very optimistic future. Um,
Yeah,
I think the intersection of all these topics, really, my goal is to just have the conversation publicly. I know of so many people that behind the scenes will have conversations, but that doesn't really help. It helps
right.
you as an individual, but it doesn't really help in any other capacity.
Community.
And
Yeah,
that is the goal I have. Fundamentally, whether people agree with me is not my goal, right? I have my
yeah,
opinions, people are entitled to theirs, but to simply have the
right,
conversation is super
right,
important. And
right.
today is what that's what we've accomplished. The controlling of a narrative and just the ability to say something different, because
Yeah.
we clearly don't see any of that. Otherwise, if we did, if it was already a thing, you and I would not be here, right?
Yeah.
You would be off
Correct.
talking to
Correct.
somebody else that was already doing this.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's the point, right? Nobody is doing this. People do want to see
Right.
it, and
Correct.
at the end of the day, it really helps you, and it helps somebody else that might be an upcoming Mandar, right? There might be
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
version of you that's growing up right now that is going to need that support, and we should
Yeah.
be there to help
Correct.
catch them, because
Yeah.
beautiful things can come from it, and it's very
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think then, we made a lot of ground. We covered a lot of ground in this
Yeah.
conversation. I
Yeah.
think, we've
Yeah.
hit on some really hard points. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you being a good sport about all of it. And I just wanted to see if this last part, I think I mentioned it to you before, but there's a project on GitHub called JSON SCADA that
Mm-hmm.
I had Ricardo Olson on a while back, and I'm curious to see if you've come across the project before, and if you wanted to share some of your products, maybe similarities or some of the areas that you guys particularly focus on, and some of the areas that you really meet a need with.
Can you come again, please? I mean, I'm not exactly able to get what is expected. So, I mean, I've not seen that Jason SCADA,
Okay.
so I'm not even aware. Not, I mean, it has not been discussed. So, I cannot comment on what Jason SCADA is about right now.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
If
Yeah, the other last point I wanted to ask is if you would be able to explain some of the niche areas that you guys are meeting a need with your SCADA solution. If you're designing, a feature just for a HMI, or if you're designing, particular functionality for what people can see as a DCS, or if you're targeting a particular feature like failover, not just hardware failover, but application failover, just to give like an overview of your company's product and some of the specifics that you're meeting a need with today.
okay, so we specialize in providing remote monitoring applications. Okay, so it's a full fledged SCADA which can be installed on Windows as well as Linux machines. Can be on-prem, it can be on cloud. Both of the things are possible. So what we are trying to do, or rather we are working with one of our customers, is that's a special purpose machine manufacturer. They manufacture hydraulic presses and servo press also. We are providing a solution for them to reduce their maintenance cost, AMC cost, because the machines are sold across the world and they don't get to see what is happening at their customers' end. Right. So we are placing our product there where there will be multi-user role-based access to the application, where the manufacturer of the special purpose machine can monitor all their machines. At the same time, they can provide access to their customers also on individual level basis. So that is a project that we are currently working upon. That's rather a feature that we are adding up to the product, which will be customized for each SPM manufacturer. And there will be, I've seen that they have already started seeing the benefits of what we are doing with them right now.
Sure. Yeah, remote, access is pretty big, and endpoint management too is equally just as important. It's it's not something that's really easily available in a package. And, I'm always curious, not that you have to specify technology specifics, but I'm curious if some of the sort of libraries and frameworks you guys are using to develop, if you're finding that you're having to develop your own custom libraries, or if what's out there is able to meet a lot of your needs.
We work on some open source libraries as well, like Bootstrap. The core on which we work. I'm not a technology guy, so I'll be able to only tell you on from a block cross point of view.
Sure.
So we work on AngularJS, Node.js. So that's your server side, that's your front end, and we work on a lot of JS based things. At the same time, we work with MySQL, MS SQL both. So on technology front, that is all what we cover. So the important, or rather, I will not say a differentiator, but a unique point that we're trying to put here is we're trying to bring in a lot of IT perspective to the application that we are delivering to this particular customer. I guess the implementation would take another month and a half or 2 months kind of timeline. But this will be an OT application with a lot of IT overload on it.
Yeah, I think that's a clear example of the two worlds converging. I think they've always converged, but people like to hear that apparently, where, the two have always been there. You have an application and you need to manage it and the endpoints. And it's, again, another positive example of what the future holds, because clearly more and more people are beginning to see that these two are inextricably linked. There's just no possible way of separating them. And, all of the management of network ports, firewalls, and all the other things are inevitable when you're deploying an application, right? So thank you for that summary. And, I'm glad to see that you're finding success in there, because it's just another example of IT and OT, which have always been the same in my eyes, just coming together yet again. So, any parting words, Mandar? Anything you wanted to add that I might have missed? Something that
I feel we have covered everything that we had on our agenda. So we'll park the hackathon thing. We'll connect again We'll connect
yeah.
offline.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
in, and
so
I'm
that's
always
pretty much
happy. Yeah, I'm always happy to help organize it. Opinions
yeah.
might differ, but events like that, I'm always happy. So let's
Let us
chat
create
offline.
a let us create a case and then let the organizations or the associations understand that this is possible for even OT, so to say, as, as that is currently differentiated. So there are no success cases even for them to bet their money upon, right? So let us have one hackathon. Let us try to see how many people participate, what is the kind of output that we receive. And then maybe we reach out to CSI and then tell them that, okay, this is the level of the success that we could achieve with the limited resources that we had. And with CSI putting its weight behind us, we can actually expect it to go to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Mandar, again. Thank you for everybody that tuned in, and I saw a couple of people saying hello. So you got some fans in the audience, and with that, we will close it off here today. Appreciate everybody
Yep.
for being here, and stay tuned till the next one. So we'll go ahead and cut the stream off.
Sure. I also want to thank you, everyone. Thank everyone. First of all, to you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to the contradicting opinion to yours also, and for everyone who attended patiently and listened to both of us.
Absolutely. See y'all.